One of the most important steps in delivering an awesome Webflow website to your client is all in the setup. It's how you set up those variables and color schemes, which we're going to get into, and components and all of that good stuff so that it's not only easy for you, the developer, to use, but it's easy for your client to update and manage on their own too. Now, every client and project is going to be a little bit different with what they need in terms of editing controls. If you are like me, you might be working with some entrepreneurs or some smaller teams who are more used to having editing control because maybe they're coming from a platform like Squarespace or Wix or something like that. And so even though they're moving to a more advanced platform with Webflow, we want to still give them that same flexibility and control and feel empowered to make some changes. And we can totally do that, but it just takes a little bit of strategy in how we set up the file. And is the exact process that we are going to walk through today. And I show you how I set up my Webflow files and what I do inside the designer to really set a project up for success, not just for me, but for my client in the long run too, so that they feel comfortable inside of it, editing the pieces that matter to them most. And because I work as a team of one, it is no surprise that I love any tool that's going to make my process a little bit more efficient, take some of those tedious tasks out. So yes, we are going to be using Relume to help set up this project for us. And I'm going to walk you through the steps that I take once I'm inside of the designer to set this thing up. And if you're familiar with Relume, then you've probably noticed that they've made some pretty major changes to how they set up their style guides using something called color schemes. And this is because they've added a new tool called the Style Guide Builder, which is a great tool for anyone that maybe feels a little less comfortable with design or wants to quickly iterate some concepts and ideas for clients faster. But the way in which I use it most is actually to help with the import and setup of the project, which is exactly what I'm walking through today. But with this addition of something called color schemes, which is kind of a new way that we're styling our sections, it was admittedly a little bit confusing to me at first. And there unfortunately is not a lot of content out there explaining how to use it, even done by Relume, just because it is such a new feature. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And hopefully I can help any of you who might have questions about this. And I'm just going to show you what has made the most sense to me and what I'm moving forward with in my projects. And to show you this, I'm actually going to show you a video that is inside my latest resource, the Webflow Playbook, which is my go-to resource and checklist and second brain that I use with every single client project that I build inside of Webflow. And it just got a major update because I've added video content to every single step of the process. So you can watch me build an entire website from start to finish through the perspective of what I would deliver for a client, and it's available now. But because this specific topic of color schemes and setup was one that actually kind of confused me lately, I want to offer this video to you guys for free because I think there might be a few of you out there that had some of the same struggles that I did. So I really hope this video helps you in your process. And if you happen to like it and like my style of teaching and want to see the before and after, you can head to the description and check out the Webflow Playbook for yourself. Without further ado, let's dive into the designer and start setting up our Webflow project. Now, let me give you a little bit of helpful context about this project first that my students have because they watched previous videos that you guys do not yet. So this is the homepage that we are building. We've already done the sitemap, we've already done the wireframe, we've already done the styling in Figma and all of that stuff, and now we are bringing this into Webflow. You'll notice we've got a little bit of a complicated color scheme here because our body text color and our heading color are different. This is going to come into play in a second. We've got card styles here that are white with photos. And then on different pages, we're actually going to be using even different color palettes like this blue. So let me show you. This is kind of an example of these color schemes that we're going to be creating. So we've got this red with yellow heading, this beige with red heading, this blue with green heading, and then white or black copy. It looks pretty awesome, if I do say so myself, that each page has kind of a flip of a color scheme, something fun. And this is more realistic of the sites that I'm normally building. So I'm actually glad that this cost me a little bit of trouble with the Relume stuff so that I could teach this to you now. So I turned a wireframe that I made into a style guide using their new beta style guide feature. And most importantly here is that I imported all of my colors from my color palette. You'll notice on the right here, this doesn't really look like the homepage that I just showed you, and that's okay. This is meant to be like a quick sort of, pitch concept type of tool. But what you can use this for is to do some quick styling and updating of your project so that when you go into the Webflow Designer, you're not having to do it manually in the style guide by like adding every variable color, adding every shade, adding every color scheme, etc. We're still going to do some manual work, of course, nothing is perfect. But by importing these colors here and locking them, what it's done is it's created all of these different tints and shades of that red, of that blue, of that cream, which do really come in handy when you're doing things like cards or hover states of buttons. I didn't used to add a lot of tints in the past, and I feel like lately, in the past year or two, I've started to embrace them a bit more. And it's nice just to have them in the file if I didn't have to set it up, so that if I do need it, it's already there. Now we're using custom fonts, so there's no sense in me updating these fonts. I think I might actually use Work Sans as my body copy font, but something custom for the heading. So I just did something that was similar, put the button style as close as possible, same with the cards, rounded edges, and then let's go ahead and import that. As you may know, you need to use Relume's official starter project, which is a free clonable, in order for all of this to work. And then we are going to, before we've done anything, this is just blank project, open up the apps panel, not to be confused with the Relume Chrome extension, which is also important and you should have downloaded, but we are going to be using the Relume app. And then I'm going to click launch app. I'm already logged in here. I'm going to go to my project, which I've got right here, and you'll see my color concept right here. So you could import the unstyled wireframe still if you wanted and do some of this stuff manually. But we're going to look at this option 2 today, which is actually importing a more styled wireframe because it does speed up some stuff. I am just actually going to import, maybe I'm just going to do 2 pages for the moment. Maybe let's not do recipes. I can import the rest later. This usually takes a couple minutes to update depending on how big your site is, so I'm gonna let this do its magic, and then I'll be back here in a second. All right, so that import is done, and let's go ahead and close this panel. I chose a navigation that needs a little bit of animation setup, so that's what this instruction is, and I'm just gonna hide that for the second. Now, what's nice about this and different, you'll notice, is that this whole page is already red with white text. And as I just click into this a little bit, so we've got section header 9, you can see that a combo class has already been added to this section called color scheme 1. That's kind of what I was talking about with these schemes that we're going to be using. So we can use to style these sections quickly a color scheme 2, a color scheme 3, which is going to be great for a site like mine that does in fact have very different color schemes. It can help speed up some of that process. So let's head over to the variables panel real quick. First, let's look at primitives, and you can see that Relume imported all of my shades and hues for me of this color scheme, which is great. One pro tip that I do want to remind you of, I made this mistake previously and it cost me a lot of time. When you are importing your colors into Relume Style Guide, it's going to automatically give you a name, and most likely it's not going to be blue or green or yellow. It's going to be like mustard or peacock or something like that, which is cute, except that when you are actually inside of Webflow and looking to find these colors, you don't want to remember to search for peacock or mustard. You want to type in green or yellow for one of these now many shades and colors to come up. So you can edit the names of those colors right here. I highly recommend that you do that first if you're planning to do this import, to change those fancy color names to something simple that your client will understand, like red or cream or blue. Because when it uploads into Webflow for you, all of that's already going to be written. So you don't have to go back and like rename them, which can honestly cause some issues. So that is a little pro tip to do first. We've got all of our variables here, which is great, as well as all of those neutral shades too, and a lot of opaque transparent shades, which is a great addition that I found myself really loving. And then inside of color schemes, it's going to prep you with at least 2 of these color schemes, and then we can add more ourselves. And you see that we've got a text, a background, a border, an accent, and a foreground. The text links to the text color, both the heading and the body copy. Then the background is the background color. Let me actually pop back over here. So when we're looking at an example that's got like these card styles, the background is red. What Relume is calling the foreground is going to be this darker magenta hue of the red that's inside of the card. The text is obviously white. I don't see an example of an accent color in this particular section, but that usually is just an icon. I don't think it applies to the button. That's something we'll style separately. And then let's see, text, background, foreground. Oh, border is the border of a card. So you may not use all of these. I usually don't. I think I've rarely had a border, but background, foreground, and text and accent are really the most important. So you will link these to your pre-made primitive variables here. So for example, in this color scheme 1, we've got the background already set up to red, we've got the text already set up to white, which is great, but I actually want to change this foreground to be white because when I'm using a section that has cards, I want my cards to be white. Now, this is gonna look a little weird when we go to the style guide because the text that I'll need to put on top of the card it's going to need to be dark. It obviously can't be white like it is for color scheme 1. And unfortunately, there isn't a way to specify like different text colors within a color scheme. So we can't at the moment have like a different heading color than the body copy color, than the color inside of the card. But there's some ways to work around this. So just go with whichever color. I'd probably just do whatever the body copy is, whatever the majority of the section content text color will be, as opposed to me changing this text to yellow to match that heading. It's easier to change one heading than it is to change like 3 to 4 text elements within a section. So that's why I leave that as white and we can manually change it to yellow. So let's change this foreground to, I want this to be white, or I could even do, no, let's not change what I did. Let's keep it as white. Border, actually don't want a border color. So I'm going to do transparent. And then accent, I want to be yellow. So that's our color scheme 1. Color scheme 2 is going to be this beige option, right? So we've just done color scheme 1. Now we're going to have a beige background, black text, and red accent. And so look, in order to find that color, I can type in the word cream as opposed to mustard or peacock. Border, I want to be transparent. Text neutral darkest, that's great. Accent red. Foreground, I want to be a white card on that cream. And then we're gonna need to create a third color scheme for that blue concept. Which is actually gonna take a little bit of extra work. So we're gonna use this new variable button up at the top. I'm going to add a color, and the first thing I'm going to do is actually give it a title of color scheme 3, and then I'm going to hit the backslash. This is going to create another group similar to how we already have it done for color scheme 1 and color scheme 3, and then I want to repeat these exact same titles. I want to spell them correctly, and I want to use the exact ones that we have set up. This is going to be linked to something in the custom code that Relume sets up in those global styles. So it's important to spell these correctly. So I'm going to do color scheme 3 backslash text. So look, that's created that group for us. And then now that I'm within this group, I believe I can just, I don't need to type in color scheme 3 every single time. So let's do background, border, accent, and foreground will be this last one. Chain. All right, background is going to be the blue. So click the purple to connect to those variables. To grab our blue, the text is going to be white. The border is going to be transparent. The accent is going to be green. And the foreground is going to be white as well. Let me double check that. Yeah, I like green as the accent color, but if I'm doing a card on it, I still want it to be white and then have a photo, not green. Okay, just clarifying that. So great, we've added a color scheme 3. Now let's go back to that homepage. And we're going to open up. You'll notice inside of global styles, I'm going to double click into this, and we've got as I double clicked into global styles, it opens up that component, and you see we've got like 3 different sections now: style overrides, fonts, and then color schemes. So let's click on color schemes and open up this code editor. And we can see as we scroll to the top that it's got some code here for this color scheme too. We are going to copy this exact thing, including this bracket down at the bottom, and basically duplicate that for color scheme 3. And all we are going to do is just delete that 2 and replace it with a 3, and do that for each line here. So it is going to mimic what it does for color scheme 2. It's basically overriding, what this is doing is it's overriding that color scheme 1 for these different styles, I think. Okay, save and close, and now that should work. So just to show you a quick example of what that's going to do, as I click this section here, section header 37, oops, or even let's actually go down to this second CTA section. And interestingly enough, you can see in the import, because I had this as a component in my wireframe, it's already made this a component in my website, which is actually kind of a nice feature. So I'm going to double click into that so that it's editable. And we can see that in section CTA2, it's got color scheme 1. Now, I can delete this class if I wanted it to be color scheme 2, and it shows you those existing combo classes, but you notice that we're still missing color scheme 3, which means we need to create our own combo class, which we will do in the style guide. But first, you can just see that if I change that class, it goes to beige, which is kind of nice. So let's head over to that style guide. We're going to get to this typography in just a second. First, I actually want to scroll down while we're on the topic of color and just make that third combo class. So because this page is red, this down in the color scheme section, this looks a little crazy. Okay, so we've got color scheme 1, which is blending in with the background because it is in fact red, as we can see here. We've got color scheme 2, kind of playing in the navigator down here. And I am then actually going to duplicate this card. Let me make sure I'm grabbing the right div here. Yep. I'm going to duplicate it to create a third scheme. Please ignore this hideous font, which will be changed. And you can see actually the accent color in play here. It's changing that icon. So I've duplicated this. I'm going to first just change these names, which isn't changing anything in the code. It's just for my clarity. And then I want to find the div. Okay, yes, I want to find the div that is still the duplication, which is color scheme 2. And we are going to duplicate and call this color scheme 3. And this is creating an additional global class. Oh, and look, it already shifted because we changed the code first. It already shifted that icon to green. And so now let's change that background color to our color scheme. You see it's got color scheme 3 here. And let's change the color text to white. And there we go. And then in theory, what I'm going to be doing is for a heading, I would first use a heading style of, let's say, if we wanted this to be an H2, and then I would give that heading a text color green. But you'll notice we don't have a combo class to use yet. I could make this black if I wanted, but that doesn't make sense. So that's going to be another step we're going to do in the style guide, is creating those additional combo classes. So now let's go back and actually do this in order. We're going to start back at the top of the style guide, and let's go fix all this typography. I'm going to go upload my custom fonts in the settings, which is separate from what we're going to cover today. And then let's get into the rest of the styling. Now in our typography variables, let's change the headings to our brand font. Our body font is already correct with work sans. And then UI styles is set up for us as well. So this is going to be like corner radiuses for things. And depending on if an item is small, large, we adjust the corner radius so that they sort of visually look the same. And we are all set with our variables. So that is complete. So let's talk about headings for a second. There's always going to be two versions that we have to style for our headings, which is going to seem a little tedious, but is actually very important for the structural build of our website. And you'll notice that we've got H1 through H6 here with a little class next to it that's in pink. It's hard to tell it's pink because I chose a bright red background. And then below that, we've got our headings repeated, and we've got a class that's written in blue. And you'll notice they even look a little bit different. And the reason is when we're building a page, we want to make sure that we're using our headings appropriately for SEO reasons. So we want to always be using an H1 at the top, and then that goes down to an H2, and then the next one might be an H3, and the next one might be an H4, etc. However, when we're designing a site, it doesn't always work that perfectly, right? It's so common where in a section we might be using heading style H3, and up until this point we followed that 1, 2, 3 structure. But now in the next section, we don't want to use an H4, we actually want to use an H2 again. So that's where these classes are going to come into play, that it allows us to properly tag a heading with the proper HTML default heading and then style it a bit differently. So we just have to do this piece twice. So in order to style the HTML tag of these headings, we're just going to click on it and click over until your style selector. And under HTML tag, click all H1 headings. Now, the first thing I might want to do is make some sizing changes. So I'm going to double check my Figma file and see, okay, I used 80 pixels for H1. Now we're using rems in Webflow. And so the math for that is going to be 80 divided by 16, which is going to be 5 rems. 16 is the default pixel size, which equals 1 rem. So whatever pixel size we're using divided by 16, Webflow will do the math for you automatically, and that's how we've got our rem. So great. All H1 headings are going to be 5 rems. And then do I want it to be bold? I think am I using extra bold? What am I using? I am using extra bold. Okay, great. And then conversely, I'm also going to want to style heading style H1 to be the same thing. So I'm going to make this 5 rems, 1.1, and I'm going to make this extra bold. I find it easier to do it like do both H1s than both H2s, just so I can remember what the font size was and go through all of these and just style them appropriately. I'm going to speed through this so you don't have to watch, and then we'll chat again. Okay, I'm pausing because this is a perfect example of a mistake I made. I forgot to select the HTML tag as I was styling this. So see how it created a style of heading? That is not what I want. So I am going to remove this class and I'm going to do this again. And don't forget to click that HTML tag. Okay, so we're done doing our headings. Now we're going to do the same thing with these HTML tags for a few other elements. So we've got our paragraph font here, which I actually don't think we need to make any changes to. This is going to be like the root size of our paragraphs by default. So that could be 16 pixels or 1 rem. If you want to make it a little larger, go for it. I'm going to leave it as is for the moment. That's fine by me. If you want your links to look any differently, so maybe if you want them to be underlined or if you want them to be a different color, you'd go ahead and change that there. I might make, actually, let me just style this block quote. I feel like I want to give it one of those transparent background colors, actually. Something super light, just so it stands out a little bit. Yeah, I think that looks nice. Okay, and then we've got our text size larges and mediums. Make sure that these font sizes are what you want. Looks like I am using, for my text large, is 24 pixels. This almost looks a little big. Let's see if that math is right. Oh, it was a little small. Look at that. Okay, that looks good to me now. And usually I don't need to make any changes to these. These should all kind of be done for you. All caps, that looks good. Text alignment. And then rich text. So within any blog posts, if you want headings to look a bit differently, you could go ahead and do that here. And basically that means adding any headings or paragraphs that you style that are within the class of text-rich text for, like, say, a blog post. So that would be for a recipe card here. You can make the headings look a little bit differently. So maybe if you wanted the headings to be a bit smaller, if you're using these like really bold display fonts or just different fonts in general, you would make that change within this class. So it's interesting actually that our H1 is so thin. I don't want that. I want it to be extra bold, and I want it to be 4 rem, and then I want all H2s to be 3.5. And let's make this 3. Okay, that looks good. Now, until these color schemes are ironed out a little bit more of how exactly we should be using them by Relume, there's a couple of classes that I actually want to add to this that kind of mimic what we used to do in the previous version. So this is going to be like a little bit of best of both worlds scenario, and I'm just going to add it to this color section. So I'm just going to add a div in here, and I'm going to add a couple of blocks of text, and we're going to create some of those text classes that we used to have, because I'm not sure why they removed them altogether on this style guide, but I want it to be like text color red and text color yellow. So we're just going to create these classes within the style guide, and then we can use them as global classes throughout our project and kind of add them as combo classes on anything we want and make those changes. So it's just something we're going to do manually here. So let's do, this is going to be our red. And it gets a little bit confusing too, because now that we've created these color schemes, when I type in red, we can either see the variable that's attached to the color scheme or just the plain color. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to go with the plain color. Now, of course, we're not going to see this. Now duplicated this, and let's duplicate that class and call this text color yellow. Type in yellow. And just keep doing this for as many colors as you would like. I've got quite a few. Maybe shouldn't have made such a complicated brand guideline for this example, but I think it is a more realistic use case of how we actually design. What other colors do I have? I've got, I think white and black are already defaults in here. I'm going to do a text color black just in case. I think they already have that, but oh, yes, it says copy. Okay, so I'm going to delete that. I'm pretty sure there's already a text color black. So we've got yellow, green, blue. That's all we need. And then lastly, okay, I'm going to add another div in here. And I don't know that we're going to need these, but I'm going to do a few background colors as well. So let's go. Oh, I called that yellow. I don't know why I did that. Let's do background color white. Okay, duplicate. I don't know if I'm going to need to use these with the addition of these color schemes, but I just would rather be safe than sorry, I guess, and have these set up and just show you how to do this as well on your own should something go awry. Okay, white, blue, red, yellow. Last one is green. And this is a principle that I actually use for a couple of things, that when we add these to the style guides and we're giving something a class that is just a singular class, it's not attached to anything else, and it's got a change in style, then we can use these as what's called global combo classes. So I could now add background color yellow to any item across the site, and it's going to add that styling feature to it. Whereas if I were to, let's say, be on a section, let me actually go to the homepage real quick, because this is something that actually took me a bit to understand, right? So I'm within a section blog 68. It's got color scheme 1. If I maybe wanted to create background color yellow, and I'm going to use something that doesn't already exist. So let's say I wanted to create background color purple. I don't know. And I'm going to unlink this and make it, I just want, yep, okay. Right? I'm like, okay, cool. Now I've got that class that I can reuse. But if I go to a different section and on the back end of it, I go to type in and I'm like, that's weird. Why isn't background color purple coming up? I just made that. It's because I made it as a combo class rather than making it as a class that stood on its own that now can be added to anything I want. It's because it's already got these other parents above it. And so this class only exists as a third item behind these two things. Whereas, I'm going to Command Z a bunch of what I just did here. For these combo classes we created, I can go to any item and now do text color, and we're going to have all of these, see it says global combo classes. All of these classes that I used can be reused. So that is the beauty of the style guide. You could do this anywhere on the site, but it makes most sense to do it first in the style guide. But that's really the beauty of creating these global combo classes that can be reused. So those are especially helpful when it comes to things like color. So just as a safety net, I want to make sure I've got this for text and background colors, even though the style guide is looking a little bit crazy. And now into buttons, let's go ahead and style those to look the way that we want. I'd actually, to make this more realistic, these are going to be like our standard buttons, and then we've got our buttons that are is alternate, which basically means like the dark mode version. Now, technically, I'm going to be using the dark mode version for most of my pages because I have really dark colors. So this is probably a red button, so I actually want to give this component a background color of white just so I can realistically, or cream, so I can realistically see. Oh, perfect. I've already made a combo class for this. Background color white, so I can realistically see what these buttons actually are. So I'm pretty sure that I want my primary button to actually be yellow. Not I'm pretty sure. I am sure. I want my primary button to be yellow. And then my secondary button, I'd imagine I want to be an outline of white, or in this case, it would be a dark color because this is the light mode. So I actually don't want there to be a fill. Let's remove that. And then I want there to be neutral darkest, but like a little bit opaque. And then for something that's a link on a hover state, underline, great. And it looks like, yeah, these buttons already have default hover states. So to edit that, we're going to select here, go into hover. I don't want it to be red, but I see now this is why Relume likes that we automatically add those dark versions of colors, because they've attached it to their hover states. Now, not every button hover state is just going to be, let's just make it a little bit darker. You might want to do something a bit more creative. In this case, I'm going to keep it easy and just do, yeah, but yellow darker is like super ugly. That's not. So I'm going to actually make it yellow. Then I'm going to unlink it and just make it ever so slightly darker. And now I might want to update that yellow darker just to be this color code. I also want to get rid of this stroke that's happening on the hover. Okay, that looks a lot better. So I'm actually just going to quickly pop over to my variables and make that change. Turn that yellow darker. Oh, it's out of order. I see. There was a yellow dark that wasn't quite as ugly. I'm still going to give it, this is the one I decided on. So that would have been a good step for me to do previously, is to actually check the darker and lighter versions of the colors and make sure that was actually what I wanted. I skipped over that. We've learned our lesson. Great. And then, yeah, I don't want the hover state. It's just like an ugly hover state. I want it to turn yellow. And I think actually on my primary button, I want the text to be black as well. Okay, we're good there. And now in our dark mode, so this would be like the red background. It's alternate, makes it white. I kind of also want it to be yellow, but it's going to, because this button color is going to be different on my different colors. So I've got a page that's blue and it's going to need to be a green button. And then I've got the red page and I'm going to want it to be a yellow button. So I would almost rather, I can just leave this dark mode as is. What I actually want to do is just create different button colors in general. So I am going to duplicate this button. This is where I wanted to do like is green, is red, which is essentially what we've done here with these background colors. And I'm realizing that it's just unnecessary for these names to be background color blue and to be so long. I kind of just want to rename them as is blue, is red, it's just faster, is yellow. Sorry, I'm changing all of this on the fly with this new system because these used to be created for us. So I wouldn't have had to make, like, I wasn't making these already existed. But now that we are making these, this is what makes the most sense. Okay, back in action. So now I can do button is green and change a button at any point. So I'm going to leave this as is. This is great. This is fine. And then we've got, why? Button is icon is making this green. Why the hell? Oh, I want to reset that. Okay. Cool. This all looks fine. This tab blank should be dark. Right? We'll cross these bridges when we get to it. Because I'm not totally sure. Okay, like the slider arrow I know I'm going to use. Slider arrow icon default. And I want the text to be dark. Or red. Great. And also, I think I want these to be circles. So I'm going to do radius large, makes that a circle. Cool. We've got tags. I'm 90% sure I want all of these to be yellow. And it's okay if you don't know the answer to some of these questions yet. Like oftentimes, it's not until I'm really designing all of these things to match my Figma designs that I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I wanted that tag to be. Or actually, maybe I want these tags to be different colors depending on what categories they're attached to. Like, I don't always have every tiny little detail figured out when I get to development phase. Sometimes it's not until you're in the weeds that you really are like, oh, okay, that's how I want to style it. Like these form fields, I feel like I want these to be more white than I do dark. So I don't know. This might have been simpler if we had uploaded the unstyled version. I'm not totally sure yet. And then, yeah, I think the rest of this all looks good. And then as a final step, okay, so let's go back to our checklist. We've updated these, we've updated our typography, we've styled any remaining classes. And then lastly, I like to add sometimes some extra animation combo classes like slide up 1, slide up 2, fade up that already has the timing associated with it. And I usually copy and paste this over. It was like a clonable that I found years ago that had this, or maybe it was a template that had this, that I just copy and pasted it from the style guide and have added them to my style guides ever since. So that looks a little something like this. Okay, so I've opened up a template that I used to use where I've added these in, and I am just going to grab, like if I click the preview mode, see how these automatically fade in. All that is I basically gave something a class of fade up 1. And then in interactions, added a little bit of a slide animation. There's different offsets and delays. So like slide up 2 is going to have maybe a 100 millisecond delay. Slide up 3 is going to have a 300 millisecond delay. So you get that effect. So that way, very quickly on pages, you can kind of add some animations to items at the very end. This is like a pretty basic bare bones way to animate some stuff for a simpler site. If you wanted more complex animations or things to look a little bit smoother, more custom, I would just make that directly in the site. But this is a nice little cheat code that I've kind of made for myself. So I am going to just copy that into, honestly, anywhere on the style guide. It just needs to exist somewhere. So I'm just going to put it all the way down at the very bottom. And now these exist for me to use. So in theory, I could go to my homepage and I could add a combo class of fade up 1. And then you'll see when I click play, it comes in. Now, I don't add these combo classes till the very end because I want to make sure that I know that this needs to be like text color yellow. So I want everything to kind of be styled before I go add those in, but it's at least set up in my style guide for me to use later. So last but not least is going to be opening the assets panel and just importing any of your images and icons or brand assets that you've already gotten set up. Ideally, you've already resized them if you need to, or compressed even. Otherwise, you can compress them directly in Webflow. Just make sure you're uploading good image sizes. And then lastly, now we've already done some of these. We've already added the Relume and FinSuite extensions. But another great one that I'm going to say is absolutely mandatory is going to be the Asset Bay plugin. And this is going to give you an AI generated way to do alt text, which is going to save you so much time. When I first started building, I didn't actually do these at all because I didn't know it was a thing and I didn't know how to. And no client knew the difference. And it was, not that big of a deal. But now that I'm a bit more professional and my websites reflect that, this is something I would highly recommend because once I realized that I needed to be giving in the asset panel, I'm going to go to edit settings, that I needed to give these alt text descriptions to things. Oh my God, that added so much more work when you had a site that had so many images. So one, I would use that Asset Bay plugin because it's going to make it so much easier. It will also give you the option to AI generate some of those descriptions. It gives you a certain amount of free tokens, and then otherwise you might need to upgrade. Sometimes I'll just write them myself, but you at least have them in a much easier to use panel. This is what it looks like. It literally will make your life so much easier when it comes to alt text and some SEO features. So highly recommend that there. And that is it for phase 3. Let's hop on over to the next video where we're going to get styling and designing and perfecting our site. All right, I hope you found this video helpful. I'm sure that there will be some updates to color schemes in the coming weeks or even months once Relume is able to put out their own tutorials about it. And if anything changes about how I might use them, then I will update this video too and let you know. If you've got any more questions or roadblocks that you run into when it comes to setting up your projects or color schemes, please drop it down in the comments below. I would love to help you get sorted. There will be a lot more tutorials and content in the coming months, but if you like my teaching style and you want to see how I build a project from start to finish, the Webflow Playbook is available now for you to get, and this week, for launch week, it is 15% off. All of that info will be right down in the description below, so go ahead and click that link. And once you buy it, you will be locked into any updates that I make as these tools continue to grow and shift and expand. So if my workflow changes, you will not only be the first to know about it, but you will get videos inside of that playbook as soon as they're ready. But it is good to be back here on the YouTubes. There's going to be a lot more where this came from as I'm getting back in my teaching groove. So stick around and I will see you in the next one. See you later.